Selena Hartley had learned early that the river did not give up its secrets easily. At dawn, when the mist still clung to the water like a half-forgotten dream, she stood knee-deep in the cold current. Sleeves rolled, dark hair braided tight against her neck. Her pan moved in slow, practiced circles, separating gravel from sand, hope from disappointment. The riverbend had been hers for nearly 6 months, now claimed, worked, and defended with equal stubbornness. She'd found color here. Not enough to make her rich, but enough to keep her fed, clothed, and independent. That was more than most women could say in these parts. The sound of hooves broke the quiet. Selena, straightened eyes, narrowing as a man on a bay horse, rode down toward the bank. He wore a clean coat, boots polished enough to catch the morning light, and a hat that hadn't seen a hard day's work in its life. A land agent, if she'd ever seen one. He reined in a few yards from the water, studying her, like she was a problem he intended to solve. "Morning," he called, voice smooth and confident. "You're trespassing." Selena didn't bother hiding her irritation. "Funny," she said, lifting her pan to let muddy water spill away. "I was just thinking the same about you." The man dismounted with deliberate calm. "Bruce Calder," he said, offering a nod instead of a hand. "Land agent for the Riverstone Development Company. This stretch of river now falls under our jurisdiction." Selena laughed, sharp and humorless. "That's a fine story. I filed my claim in Black Ridge last spring, paid the fees, got the papers." Bruce's eyes flicked to the battered wooden shack up the bank, then back to her. "Your claim covers the bank," he said. "Not the river itself. Water rights belong to the company as of last week." She stepped out of the river, boots squelching in the mud, and faced him square on. "You can't just buy a river. We can buy the land that controls it." Selena's jaw tightened. She had fought men like him before, who spoke softly while taking everything that didn't belong to them. "That river feeds my claim. You cut me off, you kill my livelihood." Bruce studied her, something unreadable passing through his eyes. "The law's the law. Funny how the law always seems to favor men with money." A breeze stirred, carrying the scent of pine and cold water between them. For a moment, neither spoke. Selena noticed details she didn't want to. How his eyes were lighter than she expected. How his posture held tension beneath the polish, like a man used to standing his ground. "I'm not here to throw you out today," Bruce said finally. "I'm here to inform you. You have 2 weeks to cease operations along the river." Selena crossed her arms. "And if I don't, then the company will take legal action." She smiled, slow and defiant. "Then I reckon we'll be seeing a lot more of each other." Bruce hesitated, clearly unused to resistance that didn't fold under pressure. "This doesn't have to be difficult." "Oh, Mr. Calder," she said, stepping closer until the space between them felt charged. "It already is." As he mounted his horse and rode away, Selena watched him go, her pulse still racing. She didn't know why, but she sensed this wasn't just about gold or water anymore. The river had drawn a line, and on opposite sides stood 2 people, too stubborn to back down. And somewhere between the law and the current, something far more dangerous than a dispute was beginning to stir. Selena rode into Black Ridge 2 days later, with dust on her skirt and fire in her chest. The town buzzed with its usual noise, wagon wheels, hammers ringing, voices arguing over prices and pride, but beneath it all ran the same current she felt in her bones. Change was coming, and it rarely favored folks like her. She tied her horse outside the county office and stepped inside, boots firm against the worn wooden floor. Papers and promises lined these walls, and she intended to use both. Bruce Calder was already there. He stood near the clerk's desk, coat off now, sleeves rolled as he leaned over a spread of maps. He looked less like a polished land agent and more like a man deep in a problem. For a split second, he seemed surprised to see her then. His expression settled into that same calm restraint that made her want to shake him. "You following me now?" he asked lightly. "Just defending what's mine," Selena replied, moving beside him. She glanced at the map, despite herself. Her riverbend lay marked in careful ink, boxed and measured as if it were nothing more than a puzzle piece. Bruce straightened. "You should have brought your claim papers." "I did," she said, pulling the folded documents from her satchel and slapping them on the desk. Filed fair and square. The clerk, an older man with spectacles perched low on his nose, adjusted his glasses and examined the papers. "Claims valid," he muttered. "But water rights." He hesitated and looked to Bruce. Bruce nodded. "Transferred to Riverstone Development." "Recorded last week." Selena leaned forward. "Recorded quietly, I'll wager." The clerk cleared his throat. Everything was done according to regulation. Selena's gaze snapped back to Bruce. "You planned this." He didn't deny it. "The company bought land upstream and downstream. Control the banks, you control the flow. That river's been worked by independent prospectors for years. And now, it won't be." The words landed heavier than Bruce likely intended. Selena felt heat rise behind her eyes, but she refused to let it show. "You don't know what that river means to me." Bruce's voice softened despite himself. "This isn't personal." "It always is," she shot back. "For people who lose." The clerk shifted uncomfortably. "If you'd like to file a formal dispute." "I would," Selena said immediately. Bruce turned to her, brows drawing together. "That could take months. Then, I'll fight for months." He studied her. "Then not as a problem to be solved, but as a woman standing her ground." For the first time, something like respect flickered across his face. "You're stubborn." She smiled without humor. "You have no idea." Outside, the sun sat high and unforgiving. Selena stepped onto the boardwalk, anger and determination tangling in her chest. She hated that Bruce had followed her out. "You're wasting your time," he said quietly. "Riverstone has lawyers in the city, influence." She turned on him. "And you're wasting yours thinking, I'll just roll over." A pause stretched between them, thick with words unsaid. "Why gold?" Bruce asked suddenly. Selena blinked. "What? Why this?" He gestured toward the hills, the dust, the fight. "You could have done something easier." She considered lying. Instead, she said, "Because it's mine. Every ounce I pull from that river, I earn with my own hands. No one can take that from me." Bruce's jaw tightened. "I wasn't born into this job," he said, surprising her. "I took it to survive. Same as you." The admission caught her off guard. For a heartbeat, she saw him not as an enemy, but as another person trapped by the same unforgiving land. Then, she remembered the river. "Survival doesn't give you the right to ruin others," she said. Bruce nodded once. "Fair." They stood there, the town moving around them, neither willing to step aside. Selena felt something dangerous, beneath the anger, curiosity, perhaps, or the unsettling realization that Bruce Calder wasn't the villain she wanted him to be, but he was still standing between her and her future, and that was enough to make him her enemy for now. The river ran higher after the rain, swollen and restless, its current whispering warnings to anyone who cared to listen. Selena worked the bend anyway, boots braced against slick stones, refusing to surrender even a single day of gold. Every pan felt heavier, every movement sharpened by the knowledge that her time here might be running out. She heard him before she saw him. Bruce stood on the bank, hat in hand, coat darkened by damp air. He didn't call out this time. He simply watched, as if unsure whether he had the right to interrupt her work. "You here to count my last grains?" Selena called, not looking up. "I'm here to warn you," he replied. "Riverstone is sending men, surveyors. They'll start placing markers by week's end." Selena straightened, water dripping from her pan. "Let them try." Bruce stepped closer. "They won't be as patient as I've been." She shot him a look. "Patient? You call threatening my livelihood patience?" He flinched not much, but enough for her to notice. "I've delayed things," he admitted. "Bought you time." That gave her pause. "Why?" Bruce hesitated, eyes on the river. "Because this claim dispute isn't as clean as the company says. There are older filings, overlaps. If you press hard enough, you might win. The admission felt like a crack in a dam. And you're telling me this because I don't like how this is being handled. Selena studied him carefully. His voice lacked the smooth certainty she'd heard before. This was a man torn between duty and conscience. You could walk away, she said quietly. Let someone else do Riverstone's dirty work. And then what? He asked. They'd replace me by morning. She stepped out of the river and stood beside him. The closeness felt different. No, not hostile, but tense in another way. Then help me. Bruce met her gaze, the river roaring behind them. If I do, it costs me my position. Selena swallowed. She hadn't expected that. I never asked you to sacrifice yourself. No, he said. But you made me see the cost of staying silent. A shout echoed upstream men's voices. Laughter, the clink of tools. Surveyors. Bruce cursed under his breath. They're early. Selena grabbed her coat. Then they'll see I'm not gone. They reached the upper bank, just as two men began driving stakes into the ground. Selena marched up, fury blazing. You don't have permission to be here, one of the men sneered. Orders from River. Bruce stepped forward, voice firm. Hold. This land is under dispute. The men looked between them, uncertain. You sure about that, Calder? Bruce didn't look at Selena when he answered. I'm sure. The moment stretched, fragile as glass. Finally, the men pulled back, muttering curses as they gathered their tools. When they were gone, silence fell heavy. You didn't have to do that, Selena said. She searched his face, seeing the resolve settle in. Why me? Because you remind me why the law should protect people, he said simply. Not corporations. The honesty in his voice stirred something deep and unwelcome in her chest. She'd learned not to trust easily, especially not men with clean coats and legal authority. Yet here he was, standing beside her, risk etched into his expression. The rain began again, soft at first, then steady. They stood under the same tree, close enough to feel each other's warmth. This doesn't change the fight, Selena said, though her voice had softened. No, Bruce agreed. It complicates it. She almost laughed. You always did like complications. He smiled, small and genuine. Only when they're worth it. For the first time since he'd ridden into her riverbend, Selena felt the current shift. The dispute still loomed, the outcome uncertain, but something else now flowed beneath it, dangerous, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. The river kept moving, as it always had, and so it seemed. Did they? The dispute no longer lived, only on paper. It followed Selena into town, into the saloon, into every sideways glance and whispered conversation. Riverstone's name carried weight, and weight pressed hard on those beneath it. Still, Selena refused to bend. Bruce became a frequent presence, sometimes beside her in the county office, sometimes riding silently along the river's edge. Each meeting blurred the line between enemy and ally, and that unsettled her more than outright hostility ever had. One evening, she found him waiting outside her shack, hat pulled low, lantern casting long shadows across the dirt. They've escalated, he said without greeting. Riverstone filed an injunction. They want you off the river immediately. Selena's chest tightened. Water diversion. Environmental interference. His jaw hardened. Thin claims, but effective. She laughed bitterly. They'll say anything to win. I'm afraid so. She set down her tools and faced him. Then we fight smarter. Bruce studied her admiration. Flickering before caution, reclaimed his expression. There's an older charter, territorial, not corporate. If we can find it, it might override Riverstone's purchase. She repeated. He nodded. I know where the old survey records are kept. Most people think they were destroyed in the fire years ago. They weren't. Selena felt hope spark, fragile but real. Why are you telling me this? Because I can't stand on the wrong side anymore. They rode through the night, lantern light bouncing as the road narrowed into forgotten paths. In the abandoned records office, dust and silence pressed close. Together they searched, fingers brushing, breaths held. the tension between them growing with every shared glance. Selena found the charter just before dawn-cracked leather faded ink, but legible. Her hands shook as she held it up. "This is it," Bruce exhaled slowly. This could change everything. They stepped outside as the sun crested the hills, painting the land gold. Selena turned to him, emotion tightening her throat. "You realize this ends your career." He met her gaze steadily. "Some things are worth more than titles." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Selena felt the pull, then not just gratitude, but something deeper. She'd built her life on independence, on not needing anyone. Yet here he was, choosing her fight as his own. She reached for his hand before she could stop herself. He didn't pull away. "This won't be easy," she said. "I know. And if we lose, then we lose together." The simplicity of it undid her. For a brief, stolen moment, the world narrowed to the two of them, and the promise of the river behind. But shadows stretched long at dawn, and Riverstone would not surrender quietly. The final battle loomed, and both of them knew that love like gold was something you had to fight for, no matter the cost. The courthouse overflowed the morning of the hearing. Ranchers, prospectors, merchants, anyone with a stake in land or water had come to watch the fight. Selena sat stiffly on the wooden bench, hands clasped in her lap, the old charter hidden safely inside her satchel. Across the room, Riverstone's men whispered among themselves, confident and well-dressed, already acting as if the river belonged to them. Bruce stood beside her, no longer behind a desk or a map, but fully exposed to the consequences of his choice. When the judge called the case, the room fell quiet. Riverstone's lawyer spoke first, weaving polished words about progress, development, and legal ownership. He painted Selena as a lone prospector standing in the way of prosperity, a woman clinging to outdated claims in a changing world. Selena rose when it was her turn. Her voice was steady, though her heart thundered. "This river existed long before Riverstone," she said, "and long before me. I claimed my land honestly, worked it with my own hands, and followed the law as it stood when I filed." Bruce stepped forward, then surprising more than a few people. He presented the charter, explaining its authority, its precedence, and the deliberate way it had been buried. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom as the judge examined the document carefully. Time stretched thin as wire. Finally, the judge spoke. "The charter is valid. Territorial authority supersedes corporate purchase in this instance." He looked directly at Riverstone's table. "Water rights revert to existing claim holders." The room erupted. Selena barely heard the rest. Relief crashed over her, so suddenly her knees weakened. She turned to Bruce, eyes shining. He smiled, not the careful smile of a land agent, but something freer, lighter. Outside, the crowd dispersed in noisy fragments. Riverstone's men left quickly, their defeat sharp and public. Selena stepped into the sunlight, the river's distant roar echoing in her ears. "It's over," she said softly. Bruce nodded. "For them, not for me." She faced him fully then. "You don't regret it?" He shook his head. "I regret not doing the right thing sooner." Selena studied him, the man who had arrived as her enemy and stood now as her equal. "I don't know what comes next," she admitted. Bruce glanced toward the hills, the river winding through them like a promise. "I know where I belong, and it's not with a company that sells futures it didn't earn." She smiled slowly. "You planning to stay?" "You'll have me." The answer rose from her, without hesitation. "I will." They returned to the riverbend together. Selena showed him the way the water shifted after rain, the places where gold liked to hide, the quiet strength it took to listen instead of force. Bruce really listened in. She realized that trust, like love, was built one choice at a time. As evening settled, they sat side by side on the bank, boots dangling above the current. "You know," Selena said, "this river nearly tore us apart." Bruce chuckled. "Instead, it claimed us both." She leaned into him, the future uncertain, but no longer lonely. The river flowed on, indifferent to disputes and victories, but generous to those who respected it. And as the stars came out over the western sky, Selena knew she'd found more than gold at the riverbend. She'd found home. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Western stories.